if you're an indie filmmaker that wants to distribute their movie, you will inevitably go through a QC process. QC standing for quality control. And this process is done by a third party, right? Not through a distributor, although I guess sometimes it could be that way, but generally it's a third party that takes your movie and runs it essentially through a computer, and then is verified by a person to check it against things that they're looking for. Now, how does this determine? Well, number one, each distributor has their own set of specifications, right? Technical specs that they're looking for. So you would send this to the company that would be QCing your movie, and they would use that as the baseline for what they're looking for, right? And a lot of times it's simple stuff of the volume loudness, right, of your audio, the aspect ratio, right, the quality of your video. There's technical specs of that, things of that nature. Also, as you get into the nitty gritty, there's channel layouts, meaning for audio, usually they want a 5.1 mix, a stereo mix, and this is for the full, and then they want a stereo and 5.1 music and effects track. And generally speaking, they'll want a fully fleshed out music and effects track, which means that there's literally no spaces of gaps, right? And the reason for this is because the idea would be that if it ever needs to be dubbed, they can do that very easily, and they can just take the music and effects track along with the dub and it'll work. Because otherwise, if you don't have a fully fleshed out M&E, then there could be certain sound effects that were recorded as part of the dialogue track, let's say a slamming of a fist or something like that, that didn't make it into the music and effects track, and when it's not there, it's going to be missing from the dubbed version of the movie, right? But other things that are looked for in a QC process is, is there any pixelation, or, does anything go out of framing? Is everything title safe? Things of that nature, right? So, and some of it is also like artistic intent, right? So let's say, you cut to some cell phone footage and, you have a horizontal movie, but then you cut to some cell phone footage and it's vertical, and therefore, there's black on either side or whatever, right? So, there's certain things that it'll note, like, an aspect ratio change at such and such time. Well, if it's deliberate, that's okay, right? So what ends up happening is, you get a rating from 1 to 3, and 3 being something that, has to be fixed. There's a 2+, which is, suggested or, take a look at. 2 is like, okay, it's an issue, but you can sort of overcome it. Like, for example, sometimes you can be with an action safe with text, but not within title safe. And if that's the case, it'll give you like a 2, where it's like, okay, you're within action safe and it would work, but, you'd more want to be in title safe or something like that, right? And it's always very interesting, what you sort of get out of this, because it is a very nitpicky process. And as I said, for you, it has to be a factor of like, what of this, is just as good as is, because sometimes that is the case. What of this is artistic intent, and what of this is like, oh yeah, this is great to know, let's fix it. So like, for example, with my movie, because I did some framing readjustments, meaning I scaled upward, various shots. Sometimes I nudged it too much, where literally like there's like, we're talking like a pixel or 2, of just black on the bottom of the framing. And so it's like, oh, cool, that was good to know. So I can, readjust it and make sure that it fits the entire frame. So, so those to me are kind of like the 3 levels of, how it all works. If you're curious to kind of see an actual QC sheet, then you can hop over to my Patreon page, patreon.com/PhilSvitek. I've linked it as kind of a bonus feature, right? So you can really kind of take a look at it. And normally what happens, right? So you go through the QC process once you pay that, which can be costly. And then, you would look to make as many adjustments as you can and work with your distributor of especially on the 2+, like what is acceptable to them and you versus what you absolutely have to fix. And so you work towards that. And then, for a much smaller fee, you bring it back to the QC facility. They retake a look at it, and going off the original check sheet, they'll be like, okay, cool, this is good, this is clear, blah blah blah, or noted, producer decided not to adjust this or whatever, right? So that is kind of the QC process in a nutshell. Obviously there's a lot more specifics within the whole thing, but I just wanted to give you that broad overview. As always, if you have any questions or thoughts of your own, comment down below or hit me up on social media at Phil Svitek. I would love to chat with you further about this topic.